It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy The Grind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another episode of the Hockey Writers Grindline. I am your host, Matthew Zator, and always joined in by my defense partner, Devin Little. Devin, how's it going today? We're closing in on halfway through the second round of the playoffs, and of course, the Red Wings aren't there, but you can watch good hockey. And we'll be talking Red Wings in the draft this episode. So lots of fun. Draft is about a month and a half away. And we're getting close. So how's it going?
It's going good. Tick tock, right? That draft lottery is coming up here in I think 2 days.
Yep.
Yeah, just kind of waiting it out until we have more Red Wings centric news to talk about, right? But enjoying the playoffs, of course.
Yes, for sure. And hopefully the Red Wings are far away from that. We'll actually be talking about playoffs, which will be fun on this show, which we haven't done in the history of this show. So have we? I don't know if we have.
Overdue is what we're saying.
We are overdue. So let's get started with that. Let's get started with our one good, one bad for the past week. And Devin, what's a good and a bad?
My one bad, I kind of scratched the surface of it. It's such a small thing, but it's one bad. The draft lottery got moved back an hour from 7 to 8. And the reason why I'm going to say that bad is as if waiting, a whole playoff round and a half wasn't enough. They had to make us wait that one extra hour. Whatever, we've waited enough already that an extra hour won't kill us, but it's still like, come on.
Yeah.
I need to know. I need answers. Who's picking where? And then my one good, I'm actually going to say the Florida Panthers, and I don't mean that in a hater way, like haha, they're beating the Maple Leafs. No, they're kind of the they're kind of the LA Kings of this playoff run going back to 10 years ago. Second wild card spot, shocks the Boston Bruins. And then now they're up 2-0 on the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're kind of the, I don't know. They're. It's hard to call them an underdog. They won the President's Trophy just last season, but in terms of their seeding, they're not a team that should be in the second round, let alone leading 2-0 against the Leafs. And I do want to throw a little bit of love for like a second good to the Seattle Kraken for similar reasons, right? They beat the Cup champs. Not many people had that happening outside of people who live in Seattle. And then also they're I'm drawing a blank right now. They're playing against the who are they playing against right now? The Stars. They're playing against Dallas.
Yes.
Yes.
Blank
and,
too.
Yeah. Glad I wasn't the only one. Yeah, playing against the Stars, series had 1-1. So already they look like they're legitimate, right? It's not just kind of like, oh, they caught the Avalanche when they were down. No, they kind of earned their way there, and they've already taking the game from the Dallas Stars. So the Panthers and the Kraken kind of emerging as wildcard teams and shocking their opponents through the first round and a couple of games in the second round.
Yeah, it's been surprising on the Giants that have fallen in these playoffs so far. I mean, no one thought the Boston Bruins were going to go out in the first round at all. I don't think anyone picked that. And then the Seattle Kraken against the Avalanche. I mean, I gave them a chance to win a few games, maybe like a cup. Yeah. I said it was going to go 7. But that the Avalanche will come away, but didn't happen. And now the Kraken, they're giving the Stars a good challenge, and we'll see if they can come out of it and get into the Western Conference Final, which would be kind of crazy. Expansion team, although the Vegas Golden Knights went to the Stanley Cup Final in their first season, so that they won't be able to do that. Have that on the resume, but it's been good for the expansion teams the last few years, that's for sure. So my good is that the draft lottery is close, and it's fun to see. I know the Canucks don't have as big of a chance as like the Red Wings or the Anaheim Ducks, which will probably win the lottery, although that's not guaranteed. It's the last team isn't always the one that wins the lottery, and we've seen that in the past. So that's my good, is that the draft lottery is just around the corner, and that we can finally get the right order for the top teams, we can start doing draft targets full swing and knowing where everyone kind of places. 100%. So, and then my bad is that I'd say the bad is that the big Giants haven't been performing in the playoffs. I mean, you'd hope that the best teams are the best teams in the playoffs, and that's not usually, it hasn't been the case this year, although that could be a good as well, because you see the underdogs. We always love the underdog story happening. So, but I like seeing the top teams performing and not looking like pretenders when they make the playoffs, right? So, that's my bad there. All right. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, let's talk draft. And, we've talked about, Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli. Does that change if, the Red Wings, they have a chance of getting that first overall pick or the second overall pick, which is where Fantilli most likely will go. I mean, I don't think he's going to drop below 2. I don't think he's getting first overall. That'd be a really shocking development if that would happen. Does, Devin, would that change anything if they got one of those picks in the rebuild? I mean, would it be over at that point to getting one of those 2 top names that could potentially play in the NHL this next season?
I think that knee-jerk reaction to that is yes. We talked about how the Red Wings, took some strides forward this season. They were in the playoff hunt, even past the trade deadline, and then that's kind of where things, fell apart. And we talk about how, they need to add goal scorers and, elite offensive talent to their lineup to really, insert themselves to that playoff conversation on a more permanent basis. And if you add Connor Bedard or Adam Fantilli for that matter, that's what both of those players are, right? So in theory, you fill that need, boom, you're off to the races. And even when we talked about how it would affect their plans for this offseason, I remember saying, at that point, I would treat it like you're expecting the playoffs. I would go out and get Bedard a line mate to score some goals with and all these things. And the idea there is that, like I said, it's time to push for the playoffs. Now, pushing for the playoffs does not necessarily mean that the rebuild is over. I think that it just to kind of put this in a weird, way. Let's say the Red Wings are 5 steps away from their rebuild being over. I think adding a Bedard or Fantilli puts them maybe 1 step away from their rebuild being over. You can't say a rebuild's over until A, you've made the playoffs, and B, you look like you're going to be there for a while, right? And I think that even if you add Bedard or Fantilli, you got to prove that, you're there. So I think to say the rebuild will be over would be a little premature, but I think you got to feel really confident if you get one of those guys that the end is in sight. It's not a 2-3 year thing. It's a maybe 1 more year thing type. If you add one of those guys, and the only other thing I want to add to this, I firmly believe Bedard is going to jump right into the league right away. I don't know if he's going to be a top line center right away. If he's not a top line center, I imagine he'll be a second line center. But the point is that I expect him to be in the NHL. He'll probably look really darn good too. I think I may be wrong in this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. I think I saw somewhere that Fantilli's going to go back to Michigan for next season. In which case, obviously he's not going to be in the NHL. And that gives the team 1 more year to kind of put the finishing touches on the rebuild, because Fantilli wouldn't be in the lineup at that point. So it all just kind of depends on who they get, what their timeline is, how you go about surrounding them, and then you got to execute once all is said and done. Because like I said, you can have all the pieces in the world, you can have, it looks like you're, clear for takeoff, but the proof is in the pudding. You've got to have results before you can say, oh, the rebuild's over. I remember it wasn't too long ago that, the Buffalo Sabres, they had Jack Eichel and they had Sam Reinhart, and they drafted Rasmus Dahlin first overall in 2018. And a lot of people thought their rebuild was over because they had the top center, they had top wingers, they just added a bona fide top defenseman. But it still took them 5 more years to start looking like they're actually at the end of the rebuild. So Just because you get a stud, even like the biggest stud in the world when it comes to prospects, you still gotta, put it all together and make it work.
Yeah, and Fantilli, the last thing I heard was that he hasn't decided yet, but that he's undecided, which is something, because if he was for sure wanting to go back, he'd say so. And if he was sure wanting to go to the NHL, he'd say so, I would think. Owen Power went back to Michigan this season after as well, and forwent his rookie season right after his draft year. And, these guys, they want to win national championships. And if they have a chance Michigan always has a chance. It's not always a given with them, though, because there's just so much that can happen in that Frozen Four. Like if you one game and you're out, and that's what it is, right? Even if you're the best team ever, you can have a bad game and the other team wins. So I don't know. We'll see if Fantilli decides that. But yeah, I agree. You get one of those guys, they're going to make a difference right away. Fantilli, if he doesn't play next season in the NHL, well, yeah, the team that gets him won't benefit from him next season. But I would assume he'd come the next year or the year after that. Even Power had some reservations. He wasn't good. He was going to play his senior year as well, but then decided to play in the NHL. So, I don't know. If Fantilli wants to play his next two and complete his thing, then he might. I don't know. And I think it depends on what team gets him too, if he wants.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I do agree that they'll make a difference in the Red Wings' plans, but I don't think it means that it's over for sure, like you said, because we don't know how these guys are going to fit in. Connor Bedard, as great as he is coming in, we don't know how he's going to play in the NHL. You'd assume that he's going to be great, like Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, those guys. But assumptions have been wrong in the past. These guys may take a year, like Jack Hughes. His rookie season wasn't good. Yeah. But now he's what? He's a superstar. He's a 90-point guy, and he looks that first overall pick. So, you can't assume that he's going to be right off the bat crazy good. But there's a possibility he is. So we'll see. That's why I think it's up in the air. We don't know if any of these teams that get them, that it will say that their rebuild is over. But yeah, that's the fun of it, though. We'll see how it all goes. All right, well, let's get to our first off the rush. Almost halfway through the show here already. And let's talk. I'm going to leave this next question till the end, but let's talk draft since we're talking the draft. Let's say Connor Bedard does go to the Red Wings. Who would you say would be the best? Would he be the first line center off the bat ahead of Dylan Larkin?
Not right off the bat. And I think it's not necessarily an indictment on what Bedard can or can't do. I think it's just, you don't want to give any prospect too much too soon, right? I think you can start Bedard on the second line, or even the third, depending on, how things look. But point is, not on the first line. And then if he comes in and rocks everybody's world and looks like the stud everybody kind of thinks he is, you can move him up. It's just kind of like I said, you don't want to give somebody too much too soon. And I think that you have the luxury of time if you're the Red Wings and you get Connor Bedard and you already have Dylan Larkin there as a capable 1C.
Yeah, it's different from where you're going to another team that doesn't have a legitimate top line center. And like we've said in the past, Dylan Larkin is an elite top line center. He's not. So, I think, yeah, I agree. I think that's probably the best for him. And we'll talk more if that actually happens, if Bedard does come to the Red Wings, which would be a fun show.
Sure would.
Okay, well, before we get to our comment corner section, here's a message from the Hockey Writers.
Interested in writing for the Hockey Writers? If you have experience writing about hockey, are passionate about the sport, and are looking to take your writing to the next level, the Hockey Writers could be the place for you. Here at THW, you will have the opportunity to hone your craft at one of the world's largest and most respected hockey publishers. You will have control over what you write, be able to seek out media credentials, and be supported by a large network of writers and editors. Plus, you'll get paid for doing it. If you're interested and want to know more about team openings and requirements, please visit the Write for THW page on the Hockey Writers website. A link to that page is also listed in the description.
All right, we're back, and we're going to talk comment corner. And this is all on draft as well. So thanks to Don and Paradox Destroyer for giving us a couple more draft questions for our draft centric show. So, but do they know what we were going to talk about in this episode? Well, let's get to our first one. Don asks, and this is, I believe he asked us a couple weeks ago because we had our award show last week. So, you know, a couple weeks, Don, you had to wait, but here you go. What is your opinion on the 3 consecutive second round picks that Detroit has? How valuable are they? And what would your strategy be for that second round? So that's a loaded question. I know. I mean, there's a lot you can kind of unpack with this one. But if you're Steve Yzerman and the scouting staff and whoever going through this, what would you do? I mean, these are valuable picks, especially this draft. I mean, they're higher. Second round is, I'd say, like I've said in the past, these are as valuable as first round picks to me, especially how deep this draft is. So what would you do? First of all, would you make the picks? Or would you look to trade them? And second half, actually, let's start with that so we can just kind of split that up. So would you trade the picks instead of making them?
I would be open to it. I don't know that I would necessarily be, really trying to find somebody to take them off my hands. But if I can, package 1 or 2 of them with the Islanders pick to maybe move up, maybe up to like 12, something like that. And there's a player there that I really want. I can make that make sense. And even like, the Red Wings traded a 3rd round pick last year for Ville Husso. Similar idea, right? If you can get somebody kind of in that Husso category for one of those seconds, you can hand out one of those. You still have 2 more, and then you got some immediate help. So short answer, or I guess the answer we're looking for here is I'm not shopping the picks per se, but I'm definitely open to moving them.
Yeah, well, especially when you have that many. I mean, and like I say, they're valuable. So teams are going to be looking and be like, oh, those are things we can get, and that's valuable for them. So they would probably be open to trading whoever, as that'd be a good return. All right, second part is targets. What would you do with it? I mean, you got 3 picks, and they're pretty close together, I believe.
Consecutive.
Right? Consecutive. Right. We said that. Read the question, Matt. Yeah. So 3 consecutive second round picks. You're not having a team coming in there and saying, I'm taking this guy and taking. You've got 3 that you can go and say, I'm going to get this and this. So would you go all forwards, all defense? Do you have some targets in mind looking at that second round?
So this kind of goes to my overall thoughts, including their 2 first round picks. I view, if I'm Steve Yzerman, I'm entering this draft with the mindset that this is the last draft I have to really load up and kind of put the finishing touches on the rebuild. I know that we just talked about how even drafting Connor Bedard wouldn't be the end of the rebuild, and I'm not saying that it literally is the last draft to do that. But with where they are right now and the picks they have, and where they are, where they should aim to be next year, I think this is their last year to really add some premium, prospects at, in high draft slots. I don't know if they're going to have this type of situation next year. So I would want to capitalize it as best I can. And when I am looking at these picks, these 3 in a row, what I do with them, or what I think about doing them, very much hinges on what happens with the first 2 picks in the first round. I have a forward that I really like at 9th overall. I have a defenseman I really like at 9th overall. I have a forward I really like at 17, 16, whatever it's going to be. Or 8, it's 17 or 18, I'm pretty sure. Sorry. And I have a defenseman I really like in that range too. And it all depends on, depending on which players, land in those 2 picks, then I can start really figuring out what I would do with those 3 picks. If I end up getting, all forwards with those 2 first round picks, then I probably want to get at least 1 defenseman out of those 3. The Red Wings do have a need on the right side in their prospect pool, so I'd want to get at least 1. I'd even contemplate 2 if there's 2 good ones hanging out there. But honestly, just to kind of, summarize where I'm at here, I want to fill in filling around the edges, basically. Where do the Red Wings have needs? They have needs for another top center prospect behind Michael Kasper. They have needs for a goal scoring winger. They have needs for like an abrasive winger. They have needs on the right side on their blue line. And they could even use another goaltending prospect, given, depending on, where you're going to get them. So, I target those areas. I'm, with those 3 picks in a row, I'd fill in where I need to fill in. I'm trying to get as many prospects that I feel confident are going to be NHL prospects out of those first 5 picks. Obviously, the rest of them too, but those are your prime picks right there. So anything I didn't address with the first 2 picks, that's what I'm addressing with these 3 picks, assuming I hold on to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good strategy, especially like there's a lot of speculation. We don't know. Like I said, we don't know who they're going to pick in the first round. That like it's going to change a lot. If they're able to snag like Axel Sand and Pelika in there, well, then they won't have to really go for. I mean, you could still go for a defenseman later on as well. But David Reinbacher's in that range in the first round. There's going to be prime opportunities to get some of these guys. And then the second round, you got guys that I really like for the Red Wings too. You got guys like Theo Lindstein, who's Swedish defenseman as well. You got guys like William Whitelaw, who I really love as a forward, and very creative player, very dynamic, that could fit into the Red Wings as well. Michael Robel, goaltender. Trey Augustine. I mean, Augustine could drop into that second round early. Some have him in the first round, like Peter does in his latest ranking, has him going the last pick in the first round. But he could easily drop into the second, right around with the Red Wings pick. Like you said, with goaltenders, you could pick him in the second round. That's fine, especially with these guys that could potentially go there. But yeah, there's just so many options that you could go in that second round. I'm just looking at these names, and Oscar Fisker-Molgaard, who's really gotten, some hype lately, especially from our own Logan Horn. And he's a guy that he's targeted, I believe, for the Red Wings in the past as well. Another Marco Kasper type player. So, I mean, there's just so many options that Yzerman has in that section of the draft that if he does make all those picks, no problem. I mean, that's no problem at all.
And 2 more things I want to throw out here. One, to kind of echo back to a point that you've made, Matt. In this draft, those second round picks are basically like late firsts. So what types of players are going to be available there? We're talking about players that are, Joe Veleno, Jonathan Berggren, even like Philip Hronek. Those guys are all late firsts, early seconds. And those are the type of prospects that you could probably realistically get with these 3 consecutive picks. And then the second point I want to make is that ideal scenario is that with those first 2 picks in the first round, you address your 2 biggest needs, whether that, it's up to Yzerman to determine what those are, but like you get like the guys you need to get with those picks. So then with those 3 consecutive second round picks, you have all the options in the world. You don't have things you need to do. You can do whatever you want. If you want to move them, you can move them. If you want to take somebody who's way off the board, but you really like him and you think he has high upside, you can do it. You're free to do that. That's kind of Bachelnikov from this past draft. And even, if there's a guy that is fall out of the first round and there's some issues that may be there, you can take him with one of those picks because you got 2 more. Like, there's some risk mitigation there. So I think perfect world is that you basically address your biggest needs with those picks, and then you get to just have fun with those 3 second round picks.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, there's just so many good names down there that I don't know if you can go wrong with picking any of those guys that are in that second round, unless you go way off the board. And we saw, though, Yzerman's done that as well, and he's been fine with it. So he may grab a guy that we're not even anticipating. So it's going to be fun to see what he does with those picks. All right. Well, thanks, Don, for the question. That was a great one. We got some good info there. So let's move on. And we talked about those 2 first round picks. And Paradox Destroyer asks this question: is what chance is there for Yzerman to package those 2 first round picks and move up? Now, this also goes hand in hand to where they go when that draft lottery ends. If they get the first overall pick, well, then no, we're not doing that. Let's leave that first round. We're not going to package anything. But assuming they don't, and they have those 2 first rounders, what is there a chance that Yzerman does do that?
I will start by saying that I don't think the top 3 picks are going to get moved like at all. No. I think, regardless of who wins them, I think that it would take, what would it take to acquire the first round pick? Well, what would it take to acquire Connor McDavid? It's pretty much what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
And that's not a price that many teams are willing to pay. Nor is it like real, anyways, that's neither here nor there. And then even going beyond the top 3, I think the top 5, so picks 4 and 5, very unlikely to move as well. Just because, really good prospects will be available there. And I don't know. I think that to move those picks could be acquired, but you got to pay through the teeth to get them. I think 3, not a chance. 5, very unlikely. 4 for 5, very unlikely. So then what are the odds that the Red Wings move up? I think pick 6 is probably like the highest you could realistically move up from 9. And then at that point it becomes, is it worth that extra first round pick to move up 3 spots? Mm-hmm. And if there's a player there that you absolutely love and he's not going to be there at 9, then maybe. I think for me personally, I think that having, especially in this draft, right? I think getting 2 first round prospects, especially they're both top 20 picks too. That's huge. You're going to get, we just talked about in this last question. I kind of envision them addressing 2 needs in that first round, whether it's, a right-handed defenseman or a goal scorer or whatever. If you trade both those picks to move up, you're going to get a damn good prospect, but then there's one need that you're not addressing because you gave up that other pick. And like I said, assuming I'm right, or at least kind of have the right way of thinking, and that 6 is probably the highest you can trade up. I just don't know that it's going to be worth it in the end, what you're giving up versus what you're getting. I think the only player that I actually think is semi-logical to be there and that you could make a case to trade up for is Matvei Michkov. I think there's a really good chance that he's a dropper in this early first round. And I think within reason, I'd be willing to trade up to grab him. There's obviously a lot of question marks. There's some things. There's like a built-in factor that you're gonna have to wait a few years before he even wears your jersey. But when he does arrive, I think he's going to be a franchise changer. I've made this comparison before. It's Kirill Kaprizov showing up in Minnesota and completely transforming that team. That's Michkov. And I think that could be worth trading some assets to move up to grab, assuming he drops. But outside of that, I don't know that there's anyone worth giving up that extra first to go get.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think one thing about, like with Michkov in particular, it's hard comparison now looking back, but Podkolzin was a similar thing. Like in that draft, he was, again, had a contract for another 2 years with SKA St. Petersburg, and that's why he dropped. And there was even a time he was projected to go first overall. He's had a bit of his development hasn't gone what everyone kind of thought he would, being a 9th overall pick, but it's kind of the same, similar. Michkov, I think, is going to end up being a ton better than Podkolzin will be at his prime. But I think you're right. I think the top 5 picks are pretty much locked in. I don't think teams are going to want to trade them. If they do, they're going to ask for a ton. You're going to be like, we want this guy. We want your top line center. We want that's what they're going to be getting in that first 5. There's just so much talent at that top 5. I'd say the top 5 all have chances of being first overall picks in some of these other drafts. Yeah, that's really not an exaggeration. Will Smith, what a tournament he had at the under 18s. And I think he's jumped up to 3rd overall, in my opinion. I think he could go 3. When you're looking at Michkov, I think he ends up going around where the Red Wings pick at 9. So, they even be going and be able to get him there anyway without moving anywhere. So
exactly.
Yeah, because you're looking at the guys that are up there in that top 8. There's just so much. there. I don't think there's a scenario that Yzerman would feel comfortable moving those, especially when you want to, you're going to get, like you said, two top prospects that may end up being in the NHL in the next couple of years, both of them. So, I mean, it's a tough thing to sell, not just to yourself, but to the fans saying, why are we doing this? But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he does there. I don't think he's moving them. I don't think any of these first round picks are moving. I said that though. I said that for the trade deadline. No one's going to move these. So, I mean, I may be wrong. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens on the draft floor. That's for sure.
If there is any team that is like really well positioned to, do the bold thing and package a bunch of picks to move up, it's the Red Wings that do have all these extra picks. But, I can say the same thing about the Arizona Coyotes, or even like, pretty sure the Kraken have a couple of extra seconds, and they're like already a good team. So point is that the Red Wings do have the assets to make a move, but it takes two to tango. And if, there's a team that doesn't, any of the teams with the higher picks don't want to move them, then you're just not going to get those picks.
Not happening. Yeah. And when was the last time we really saw top picks, even in other drafts, move? I mean, it's unprecedented. It doesn't really happen as often as you'd think it would.
the last year when Ottawa traded pick 7 to Chicago for Alex DeBrincat, that was like the first time that had happened in a long time, probably since Vancouver traded Corey Schneider for that first round pick. So like, case in point, right? It happens like once every 10 years, it sounds like.
Yeah. And this is even less odds this time.
Exactly.
I don't think it's happening. I mean, Yzerman may float the idea. I mean, you'll be listening. I mean, you never know. But I don't think it's happening at all. But we'll see. All right, our final off the rush question, and this is related to this, is because they could get this guy using one of these second round picks, maybe. And this is an article that's coming out by Tony Wolak. And it's about an LA Kings defenseman that could be the next Jake Walman-type trade. And we're kind of speculating, who could that be? Devin, who do you think? And don't look at his article.
Let me just pull this up real quick. What do we got here? I'm just kidding. It's interesting because of course, the first thing I did was pull up the cap friendly, right? And see, all right, who's on this roster? Who could possibly be a Jake Walman type? Only person that really stands out to me that kind of fits that profile, and that like, I know isn't like, locked in or like a really big part of LA's future, at least right now, is Sean Durzi. No. And he signed for one more year, was acquired from the Toronto Maple Leafs a few years ago, is on their roster, has played some games with LA, is 24 years old. Jake Walman was 26 when the Red Wings acquired him. I'm pretty sure he was 25 or 26. So Durzi's in that, he's in his prime, or at least like entering his prime, and maybe not as highly used as he could be because of who else is in LA. So without cheating, I promise I didn't cheat. Sean Durzi is who I think he's talking about.
You know what's funny is that was the first name that came to mind too. So we're both wrong. And you really close. Durzi was my pick too. Like that was the guy that came to mind first thing, and he would be a pretty good pickup. I mean, he had 38 points this season. He had a bit, I believe he was injured. At the end of the season, he played 72 games. So he wasn't really, I don't think he played in the playoffs. Or did he? Yes, he did. Never mind. So he may not have been injured. But Durzi was my pick. So we'll see if we're right. Devin, you could check after the episode. We'll see if we're right. I think Durzi would be a great pickup. And he could maybe had for a second round pick. Especially how valuable that is. May have to package something else in there. We'll see, but that could be a good pickup because Durzi was really good for the Kings this season, and I believe last season as well. Like he had 27 points last season, but he looked really good in those games. And he's a shot blocker. He's got he over 100 shot blocks in the last couple seasons. Pretty physical as well. So, I mean, and he's an offensive threat. I mean, 38 points is not bad for a defenseman. So, yeah, and he's only 24. So, I mean, he fits right into that core of defense that could be working in the next few years. So, yeah, we'll see. Tony, is it Jersey? We'll see. All right, and the second off the rush question is a little bit on to what you just put out an article, Devin, on the Winnipeg Jets, and about being careful with negotiating with them, because they're in a bit of a transition period. They didn't have a good playoffs. They got kicked by the Golden Knights in the first round in 5 games. Their core is, another article is going to come out tomorrow by Connor Bedard. A little bit of a teaser for 2 articles there. Not teaser, one's out, one's coming. But about moving some core players. So, here's a quick question, Devin. You wrote the article, so I'm a good person to ask. Why should they be careful with trading with the Jets?
The biggest reason is because of what their head coach Rick Bowness said. Immediately after their series clinching loss against the Golden Knights, he said he was disgusted and, to paraphrase, highly disappointed in his team's lack of pushback, lack of being able to overcome adversity. And he said that went back to February when the team was fighting for the top spot in the Central Division, and they kind of just folded and still made the playoffs, obviously, but were a quick out against Vegas. And this isn't the first time we've heard stuff like this. Paul Maurice last year, their longtime head coach, just kind of stepped down out of nowhere. Yeah. Basically said this team needs a new voice. Paul Stastny at the end of the year mentioned how the locker room needed to have that sense of playing for each other and not for personal gain or anything like that. I think that's a big old red flag. So you just kind of connect the dots and you see Maurice abruptly quitting, Stastny saying that, and then Bowness saying that hot off a playoff loss, a series loss. It's clear to me that there's an issue, a character issue in Winnipeg's locker room. And so if you're gonna, be making deals with Winnipeg, if I'm the Jets, I'm not looking to move out my solutions, the people that aren't part of the problem. I'm looking to trade away my pieces that are part of the problem. Mm-hmm. So, if you're making a deal with Winnipeg and they're like, yeah, you can have this guy, be careful, because probably part of why Winnipeg isn't where they want to be right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the thing is, they'll be trading guys to get rid of that out of the room. And do you want to be bringing that into yours? That's an interesting point. I think the Jets are going to be trading guys for sure. And there's going to be teams definitely interested, because a lot of these guys are, they're still good players in the NHL. So, Dubois, I think, will be traded to Montreal at some point. I think it's just inevitable. But I don't think the Red Wings will be getting him. But there are some other guys that are going to be interesting picks. So we'll see. Okay, well, that's another episode of the Grind Line. We talked draft, we talked some trades. So leave us the comments if you think. Who do you think? I mean, before you read the article, obviously, who do you think Tony was talking about? And if you think that the guy that he did pick would be a good pickup for the Red Wings. So leave your comments, keep them coming. Don, Paradox Destroyer, we'll keep answering them. You're keeping our comment corner going, so keep being the engine. So make sure you're keeping those comments coming. Any questions you have for us, definitely leave them as well. And the draft will keep being a center, big piece of our conversation for the next few weeks until the draft happens, and then we'll be talking who they picked. So that's gonna be fun. Thanks, Devin, for joining another episode of the Grind Line. We'll see if we have any guests next week. So stay tuned to that. This was episode 1 of season 4. So good kickoff to the season. We're talking draft, so that's always a great exciting. So thanks, Devin, for coming on. Okay, well, that's another episode, and make sure to check out hockeywriters.com for all more articles for the Red Wings and for the draft and for everything related to anything Red Wings, anything NHL. So check for that, and make sure also, I keep never mentioning this on the show, is to follow us on Twitter. We have a Twitter account, so make sure you're following us there. Devin, what's the Twitter handle there? THW
Grindline.
There you go. So follow us at THW Grind Line. Any updates we have that'll be out there, any episodes that come out, you'll know first on the Twitter account. So make sure you're following us there. And until next time, we'll see you on another episode of the Grind Line.